I got the mic. All right, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? If you do me a favor and take out your cell phone and put it on silent mode or vibrate mode, we'd appreciate that. We'll get started in just a second. My name is Jeff Patton. I'm the Vice President for the Central Pennsylvania World War II Roundtable. And if you could rise as able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please take your seats. Well, we have a great program tonight, but as always, we like to recognize our veterans first. So if you are a World War II veteran, would you please raise your hand? I know Irv over here. We have two I see, right? All right. And do you see them? I know you're going to want to talk to them later. All right. Other veterans, if you'd raise your hand, please. Thank you very much for your service. Thanks for coming out tonight, and thanks to all your families for supporting you as well. As always, we are live streaming our show tonight, and if you're willing to support this great organization, we have coffee mugs for sale on the table outside, as well as book sales for those that are in the auditorium. And we also have the helmet committee in the back of the book. So as you exit, if you feel like throwing a couple dollars in the helmets, the World War II vintage helmets, we'd appreciate that. That supports us run our show. So a couple announcements before we have our speaker tonight. For this day in World War II history, in 1943, Japanese forces on Guadalcanal Island began their withdrawal. And also, I have some great trivia and history I need to bring up because we don't have enough Air Force going on in this group right now. So, in this week in 1942, the U.S. Army Air Force activated the 8th Bomber Command. This unit would assemble the largest air armada in the world and, combined with the Royal Air Force, launched attacks across Northern Europe during World War II. This unit earned 17 Medals of Honor, incurred more casualties than the entire Marine Corps in World War II, produced 566 aces, sent 1,500 bombers and 800 fighters on a single mission, and crews who survived 25 missions were allowed to go home. The unit was renamed the 8th Air Force and earned the nickname the Mighty Eighth, and that is what Apple's TV new series, The Mighty Eighth, or the Masters of the Air was called, is all about. And it started last Friday. I don't know how people watched it or not, but it had 2 episodes, and it will be streaming on Apple Plus TV over the next couple months. All right, upcoming speakers. We have a good lineup, obviously, tonight, and upcoming in next month, March 7th, we had a change in our venue. Unfortunately, the speaker we had planned passed away, and so we're not unable to hear from Mr. Mockers, who is our French resistance fighter. But we were able to adjust our program, and we have Walter Lasota coming in, who was U.S. Marine Corps 6th Division on Okinawa, and he's going to tell his story. And then on the 4th of April, Mr. Bud Gause from the 7th Army 42nd ID Rainbow Division is going to be here. So a couple great veterans coming up for the next couple programs. And now, let me introduce our featured guest for the evening. Tonight we have Mr. Andrew Biggio. Andrew has always had a passion for history, about the Second World War, since at a very young age. Tragically, both of his grandfathers had a brother killed in action during the war. Andrew was taught about sacrifice since childhood, and after graduating from Malden Catholic High School in 2006, Andrew enlisted in the U.S. Marines. He served as an infantry rifleman during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. He finished 6 years in the Marine Corps as a sergeant and earned a bachelor's degree in sociology from Suffolk University in Boston, Massachusetts. After college, Andrew felt the need to continue to serve. He was sworn in as a police officer in 2015, where he actively still works in the Massachusetts law enforcement. In 2017, he went on to earn a master's degree in Homeland Security from Northeastern University in Boston. Andrew is the founder of Boston's Wounded Vet Run, New England's largest motorcycle ride dedicated to severely wounded veterans. And for the last 10 years, Andrew saw the need to assist soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors who returned from Iraq and Afghanistan with injuries. His nonprofit has been responsible for housing modifications, new transportation, financial support, and basic living needs for some of America's most severely wounded combat veterans. No salary is collected from his nonprofit. While helping his own generation of veterans over the last decade, Andrew saw the urgency to start honoring World War II veterans, as they were vanishing at an alarming rate. He saw the need to link their methods of living in a successful life after combat and pass it on to today's veterans. This sparked a 5-year journey, and over 200 veterans later, Andrew was fortunate to publish a written experience of the journey called The Rifle. At the average age of 94, there was one instrument that brought these men and women back to World War II, the M1 Garand rifle. Being the standard issue rifle of that time, each veteran had their own memorable experience with the weapon. And just by grasping that rifle, it acts as a time machine, bringing them back from 75 years. The most magnificent stories would be shared through this rifle. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andy Biggio.
Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everybody. How are you? My name's Andrew Biggio. Honored to be here, and especially to be in a house of God. I don't do a lot of presentations in churches, so this is makes me think about how lucky I've been, how fortunate I've been, and how blessed I've been to be able to meet over 400 World War II veterans and be reunited with one of them tonight, surprisingly, Mr. Schaefer here, who I interviewed very briefly about, I think about 3 or 4 years ago. And we met through a mutual friend of his that was a Marine during the same time frame I was. And he said, you gotta meet my neighbor. He was a combat engineer in World War II. And, you know, I always have people come up to me and or I meet World War II veterans, and sometimes right away they want to say, oh, you know, well, I wasn't in the infantry, or I didn't shoot the M1. And to me, those stories of men who did other jobs are just as important. And Mr. Schaefer was one of those men who was an engineer in Germany at the end of World War II, where you had so much trying to reconstruct that country and help them out, building roads, bridges, and not only helping the civilians, but helping the U.S. Army occupation duty. And I thought you had a very interesting story, sir, and thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing what little rations you had with those starving German kids that you told me about. So thank you very much. Well, I was told tonight I'm one of the youngest speakers you guys ever had, because usually it's a World War II veteran that speaks. And, you know, as much as whether we like it or not, this is going to be the transition now. This is it. We are going to be repeating the stories of the World War II veterans that we heard about. This is the future of World War II, guys and girls. And yes, I'd rather have you be talking to a Medal of Honor recipient who fought on Okinawa with a flamethrower up here, because I'm definitely not that. But this is what we have, and this is what we're going to do to keep World War II legacies alive and to educate our kids, because I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they'll probably never be able to hold a conversation with a World War II veteran, you know? And that's crazy to think about. And pretty soon, the way we grew up, where we saw pictures of the Civil War that were black and white photos, or the Revolution, or World War I, and we look at that photo and we say, well, I really have no connection with that, because that photo looks like it happened about 1,000 years ago. This is what the younger kids now are going to see when they see pictures of World War II, because there's going to be no World War II veterans, you know, by the time they get of age of being really peak interest of it. So that being said, I served in Iraq and Afghanistan and survived my 2 tours of duty, had plenty of friends wounded, And that's kind of why I originally started getting into veteran services, was helping my brothers and sisters who came home from Iraq and Afghanistan with severe disabilities, loss of limb, burned, paralyzed, things like that. Because I said, if, here they are being very young, they're going to need help. And by the time they're 50, they may not be able to even step into their bathtub or wash themselves or help them. And I want to let these young guys know that I have their back and we have their back for the rest of their lives. But I did have some survivor's guilt of my own, because every day after I got back from Afghanistan, I had to look at Andrew Biggio Square in the town of Winthrop, Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, we name our intersections after those who were killed in action in combat from World War I and on. So there was a Andrew Biggio Square, and my whole life people would always say, hey, there's your square, there's your name, but it wasn't. It was actually the first Andrew Biggio, who was 19 years old, killed in action in World War II. I'm about to get emotional because I'm about to tell this story for the first time in a church, so give me a second. So I remember my grandmother telling me that she had saved all of Andrew's letters he wrote home before he was killed in action. And it was time, one of those days, sitting at that intersection at that red light, it was time to go read those letters. I decided to go home to her house and pull that shoebox of letters that he wrote home from the war. And the first letter I pulled out of this box needs to be photocopied and sent to every high school in this country, because it was the greatest lesson of sacrifice that I've ever seen in writing, from a 19-year-old kid to his mother. Give me a second. And the letter said, "Dear Mom, can you please mail me a gold cross? I don't want to go back up this hill tomorrow. Tomorrow, it looks like they're making us go back up this hill. And if you could mail me a gold cross, I'd really appreciate it." And that letter was sent September 12th, 1944. And Andrew gave his life on September 17th. He received shrapnel through his stomach and out his lower back, according to the death reports. A 19-year-old kid who bled on a hillside in Italy in 1944. And I often wonder how many kids across this country will ever know what it's like to be a 19-year-old kid fighting to defend other people from another nation, to free people from other countries, and beg your mother on pen and paper to mail you a gold cross to wear around your neck, because you know you have to go up and face German machine gun fire and artillery fire pointed right down at you. This is something not just today's youth may not know, but generations of youth. This is how many letters like this were written home to kids' moms that we'll never know about. And to me, it was the greatest letter of sacrifice I ever saw in writing, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. Well, clearly I was at the end of the stack of letters, and so I went all the way to the other side, and grabbed the first letter he wrote home. And he wrote home to his mom his very first letter from boot camp, which was a much jovial, happier 18-year-old kid at the time, and it said, "Dear Mom, today we fired the M1 Grand Rifle. It's a new rifle of its time. It holds 8 rounds. It's going to be better than the Germans, better than the Japanese." And, it's funny because we always say the military makes a man out of you, but every letter he wrote home was to his mom. This is someone who had 2 brothers, a father, and he's talking about this M1 rifle to his mom. And I'm like, you know what? I got to go buy an M1 rifle. I want to see what he's talking about. I want to hold what he held. I want to feel what he felt. I want to connect to this long-lost relative. And so I went and I purchased an M1 Grand Rifle. And I bring it to family dinner that night, and everyone's like, okay, why'd you bring a gun to dinner, And I'm like, no, this is the rifle that Uncle Andy carried, and this is the weapon they had at that time, and this is what he held most likely when he gave his life. And they respected that I had this rifle, but I guess it didn't click. It didn't register to them the way it registered to me. And so I lost steam. I lost the wind out of my sails kind of with this rifle and me, and I kind of not felt stupid, but felt awkward and just felt like, okay, now what? I just spent $2,000 on this rifle and nobody cares about it. No. But then I remembered that I had an acquaintance who lived not far from me that served in the Battle of Okinawa. He was a Marine named Joe Drago who would come to the Marine Corps birthday ball every year. And I said, you know what? Who will understand this? I'll take this rifle to Joe. He'll understand what I'm talking about. And I knocked on Joe's door, and he didn't answer the door. I had to let myself in, and there he was bound to his recliner. And that's when it hit me that we were in a race against time, because there was a time where Joe was driving himself to the Marine Corps ball and getting drunk with all of us, and now I'm having to walk myself in and put the rifle into his hands, and when I put the rifle into his hands, it was like a burst of energy. I mean, this was not a hunchback over old man anymore. He put that rifle into his shoulder, aimed in, and was waving it round and round, nearly swiped my face right off of it. And we ended up talking about the Battle of Okinawa for, I'm telling you, anywhere between 3 to 4 hours. I mean, I was glued to this man talking about April Fool's Day, 1945, the Okinawa invasion. And all of a sudden, I forgot about the stress of being a police officer, the stresses of general life. I forgot about Iraq, Afghanistan, and it was just the most therapeutic thing that I have ever done, just sitting across from this man. And I said, Joe, do me a favor. Sign this rifle, please. I want to remember this moment for the rest of my life. And he did, and he signed it, Joe Drago, I Company, 22nd Marine Regiment, 6th Marine Division, Okinawa. And I looked down at his signature and I said, that was amazing. I need to get as many signatures as possible. I want to, now I have to go visit someone who served in the Battle of the Bulge, or somebody who was a pilot, or somebody who got the Medal of Honor. And I'm proud to say that 7 years later, I have just about 400 names on this M1 Grand Rifle. And I wanted to represent the whole war on the rifle. It started off as a selfish project. I wanted something cool for my man cave. I wanted to hang something on my wall. But the more men and the more women I began to meet, I realized needed their stories to be told. And I'm going to play a quick clip from a little documentary I filmed that will give you a little bit of a little bit of visuals to what I just told you, so they can roll the first verse. So coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan was, it was great to be home and all, but what really helped me spark the rifle project was passing this sign every day. This is Andrew Biggio Square, and the first thing you'll think is, if people know me, they'll say, hey, that's your square, because my name is also Andrew Biggio. The problem is it's not my square. It was my grandfather's brother who was killed in action in World War II at the age of 19. And every day, as a combat veteran myself, passing this sign, I decided to take it upon myself and find out what happened to the first Andrew Biggio on that hill in Italy. Andrew Biggio, the one we were just talking about who was killed in action, he was the last time he hugged his family, hugged his father right on this front porch right here. It's also the same porch that I left from as well. So it was kind of an uneasy feeling knowing that the last Andrew Biggio to go to war didn't come home. And luckily I was fortunate enough to be able to. When I was reading Andrew's letters that he wrote home before he was killed in Italy, I found one particular letter on how much he enjoyed this rifle, the M1 Grand. And for me, as an infantryman myself in the Marine Corps, it connected me right to this long-lost relative. I said, I want to go out and purchase an M1 Grand, have it in the family. This is the rifle that he carried when he died. And I went out and bought an M1 Grand.
I came back to this house, I'm waving it around my room, I'm looking in the mirror with it, and then I said, okay, that's great, now what? I said to myself, well, who can I show this rifle to? And then I said, my neighbor. My neighbor, Joe Drago, was in the Battle of Okinawa. He was a Marine in the battle, one of the worst battles of World War II. So I went and knocked on his door, and at this time, at age in his life, he was 92, and he was pretty much bound to his recliner. You know, his legs had atrophied, he was weak and old, you know. And as soon as I put this rifle in his hands, he had this burst of energy. He started waving the rifle around, smile from ear to ear. Oh my God, I haven't held one of these in so long, and ha ha, and he's laughing. And I had to move out of the way because he's swinging this rifle around. He starts telling me all these stories about the Battle of Okinawa. And I said, wow, like I have something special here. And I said, I want to remember this forever. Sign your name on this rifle, Joe. And he refused to do it and, until I finally talked him into it, and he signed right there, Joe Drago, I Company, 3rd Battalion, 22nd Marines, Battle of Okinawa. I made it a mission, you call it therapy, call it research, call it what have you, of meeting these men that we've been reading about our whole lives, and these are the men why most of us had joined the military. World War II, jumping into Normandy, the Battle of the Bulge, the flag raising on Iwo Jima. Today's veterans literally live in the shadows of these men, and I took it upon myself to go see each one and interview them and learn how to live a successful life after combat. This rifle is signed by approximately 93 World War II veterans. About 30 of them on this have already passed away. This project was started in 2017, and it was my way of the youngest generation of veterans saying goodbye to the oldest generation of veterans, which is our World War II veterans. The VA says there's less than 300,000 World War II veterans still alive of the 16 million who served during World War II. If you look here on the inside of the upper receiver is a name of Albert Bucciarelli. Albert served with the 3rd Infantry Division during World War II. If you're familiar with the 3rd Infantry Division, they invaded Anzio, and they were also in the Battle of Monte Cassino, Italy, fighting some of Hitler's best German troops. Well, Albert, at age 19, was laying wire down, and an artillery shell landed in front of him, killed his sergeant, and blew off Albert's leg. Albert, he didn't want to go home from the war after that. He was laying there with one leg in Italy, and he told the nurses, told the doctors, I don't want to go home. He was very embarrassed, ashamed that he was going to be maimed for the rest of his life. And unfortunately, it wasn't his choice, but naturally the Army would eventually send him home. Today, he's 94 years old. He's never been back to Italy, even with his family wanting to go on vacation in the 70s and the 80s to Italy as a vacation. He still refused to go. I believe they still went without him. He has avoided veterans organizations, groups, reunions his entire life until now. I spoke with his family, and I thought the best way to surprise him with a trip back to Italy would be at my annual event, the Boston's Wounded Vet Run.
We can pause that one.
Also known as theyfoughtweride.com is geared to.
Okay, so that was a little intro, and so I started meeting all these different veterans with the rifle, and what started off as just like I said, a me project in a way. I started to realize the stories I was uncovering, stories that were never told before, and at least in this fashion, yes. There's been millions of books written about World War II, of course, but not in this way, not where you have the youngest generation of veterans, right, the post-9/11 veterans saying goodbye to the oldest generation of veterans, World War II, and using a rifle as a microphone. As far as I know, that's never been done before, and I was just uncovering some amazing things. Maybe you could thank social media for that. People reaching out to me saying, hey, my grandfather was in the Battle of the Bulge, or my great-grandfather was at Pearl Harbor, and this started happening to me when I started posting pictures of this rifle on the internet. including Al Bucciarelli, who you just saw behind here, who lost his leg in Italy, but never returned to Italy. So I thought that was fascinating that probably 75% of the veterans that I was meeting had never returned to the battlefields they served on. And I thought that was really interesting, since some of these places are on like people like mine and yours bucket list. Paris, France, Amsterdam, Rome, Italy, Germany, you name it, just beautiful places to us, but probably really ugly places to them that reminded them of the harsh realities of war, For us Northeastern people, it's only a 6 or 7 hour flight from Boston to Paris. Why wouldn't you have gone back? Why didn't you go back? Why didn't you go back to Normandy? Why didn't you go back to Belgium? And I was met with a variety of different answers, besides the fact that these guys wanted to come home, move on with their life, have a family, have kids, and that was probably the worst experience of their life. It was World War II. But now I sat there in front of them. Well, you've outlived your spouse, right? Because that's most of them have. You sit here every single day. Would you go back with me? Do you want to go back? Do you want to get on a plane and go with me? I'll take care of you. I'll bring one of my friends who's a paramedic, a wheelchair. And every one of them were telling me, yeah, they'd go back now I guess I would go back, And I'm like, oh, great, now it's up to me. And, even though I say that, what I really was basically jumping out of my chair. To me, this was meeting my NFL player or my NBA player or my Hollywood actor. Me getting on a plane with a World War II veteran and returning to Normandy was one of my lifelong dreams without knowing it. But Al lost his leg there. This was going to be different. I was going to take him back to the vicinity where he got his leg blown off, the vicinity where he became a disabled young man at age 19, and the vicinity where his squad leader was killed by the same explosion that took his leg. And back then, guys were replacements. A lot of guys were replacements. You show up, you just show up, guys know you by first name, you're getting thrown into a platoon, into a company, and if you make it, maybe you'll get to know everyone, but other than that, there was so much turnover. Today in America, when we get together as a company or a platoon, we take a photo, and for the most part, that photo doesn't change throughout your 1 year, 8 months, 20 months, 14-month deployment. Maybe a couple of guys will get killed in action or wounded, God forbid. But back in World War II, that platoon photo or company photo you took could change faces probably Lord knows how many times, especially for the guys who fought in Italy, who started off in North Africa and ended up in Germany with over 500 days of combat. So, point being is, Al remembered his squad leader's name is Ray. He's like, his name was Ray, I was brand new, it was like our first 48 hours of meeting each other, and he was killed. I just remember his name was Ray. So I decided, while we were in Italy, to look up all the Rays and Raymonds that were buried at the Rome National American Cemetery. So there was like 14 of them. Then I broke it down by division. Okay, 3rd Division. That made it like something like 8 of them. All right, well then I broke it down by regiment, 15th Regiment. Then that broke it down to like 3 of them. And then I finally figured out which Ray it was. Because the same day that this Ray was killed was the same day that Al lost his leg. And it was the same regiment, same company, and same division. And we can play the second clip from the cemetery. So I didn't tell him I found Ray's grave. I just wanted to see if he'd notice. So here's the clip.
After leaving the information center on the cemetery, we put Al and Rocco in some golf carts and began to bring them to a specific plot.
See you in church.
Al only remembered his squad leader's name by his first name as Ray. As we approached this plot of graves, Unbeknownst to Al, he was walking upon the gravesite of his squad leader. I wanted everyone to take a step back and give him some privacy because it was really just about to hit him. He had never seen a squad leader's grave before. He didn't know that I had located the squad leader's grave. All we had to go on was the first name of Ray. I researched every Ray that was buried in Rome National Cemetery, which was about, I believe, somewhere between 8 and 14 Raymonds or Rays. However, the dead giveaway was the day Ray was killed. It was the same day that Al lost his leg. And that Ray belonged to the same regiment, the same division, the same company, and it was Ray James from Kentucky.
It's something that hit me, and I don't know. I didn't know him that well, but I knew him. And hey, he's gone. God bless him.
I'll never be able to tell you what Al was feeling at that moment. I wanted to give him his space. I told everyone that was on our trip to take a step back, and I could see Al talking to himself, like, as if, hey, sorry it's taken so long for me to come visit you, kind of deal. And as soon as Al began to lose his balance and get emotional, that's when I know I had to go over there and greet him. And the hug that Al gave me, I know he wasn't hugging me, he was hugging Ray.
He said, that barrage started, he says, let's hit the ground. He says, who knows where the shells are going to land. And we were there, and about the 5th shell of that barrage is what got us. Never heard it coming until it was too late. And then bingo. It hit Ray directly. Ray had his feet on my shoulder. We were head to foot or whatever. And he got 100% of the shell got to him. I got the outskirts of it, which was bad enough. But hey, it happened. And when we got to the cemetery, Andy had found out where he was, who he was. All we had to go by was his first name. I didn't know his last name. I didn't know where he was from or anything. That morning, he had just come back from rest area. That was his last 4 hours on earth. He took the blunt of the shell, which was a shell that dropped, they tell me, about a half a mile short.
We can pause that.
His target. So.
Yeah, doing this at a church has added a whole nother emotional level for me. I've done this. I have about 3 or 4 different speaking programs where I'll choose Italy or Normandy or Belgium or, with clips that we filmed over there. And it's hard looking back at Al because, he had a rough life. He came home, lost his leg, had about 3 kids, and his youngest son, I think, was about 6 years old, coming off a school bus and was hit and killed by a car passing by, getting off the school bus. And he taught me a lot on how to deal with different trauma. And I used a lot of examples of his life and his persona and his patience. And he's someone I'll remember forever. He passed away about 2 years ago now. And I think about him a lot, and I ask him sometimes for some strength. But to date, I have now done probably 15 or 16 trips back to Europe with over 40 World War II veterans. And it's been awesome. I've been pairing young veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan with World War II veterans over there, going back to their battlefields, going back to the cemeteries, and making a great program out of it. All at no expense to the World War II veterans or their family members that have come. And it's been fantastic. The people over in Belgium and Italy and Luxembourg and Holland, and the Netherlands, Germany, they're so grateful to meet World War II veterans. When these veterans return, they're like the Beatles. It's just insane. People are raising their grandkids over their heads, over the crowd, so they can get a glimpse at a real live World War II veteran. It's absolutely amazing. They're taught at a very young age who is responsible for liberating you and making your country what it is. And it's something that people here in this country have absolutely, positively no idea. Absolutely none. Why this stuff isn't shown in our high schools, why this stuff isn't, you know, enough with the 3 or 4 pages on World War II. You need to bring video clips and things like that to these kids who are glued on social media. And that's one thing good thing I can say about social media is my rifle project on Instagram. Between Instagram and between Facebook, probably 120,000 followers. It's not enough, but it's a start because I have 14-year-old kids and 18-year-old kids messaging me on Instagram, or their parents messaging me saying, my son really loves your Instagram page, can you get us a signed book? My son did his school book project and research project on your book, or on you, and thank you. You know, so you know, I'm getting somewhere with that as far as the current generation is going, as far as what World War II history is to them. I'll show another happier clip. How am I doing on time? Good? Okay. I'm going to show another clip. There was another veteran who was on that trip, and he was the opposite of Al, who was quiet and modest and never returned to Italy. This second gentleman goes by the name of Rocco Talese, who's still alive. He lives down the street from me. But he's the kind of guy, he's been back to Italy 9 times, was a member of his division association since 1948, knows everything, is a member of the American Legion, the DAV, the VFW, the AMVETS. You know, Mr. Veteran he is. The Grand Marshal of the Veterans Day Parade probably 20 times by now. And he came along on the trip, and you know, I poke fun at him, but I ended up putting my own foot in my mouth because on this trip to Italy, he's carrying around this trash bag full of like news articles and pictures from like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s of when he returned to Italy, as if he's going to run into all these people again that he met on this journey over there. And I'm like, Rocco, will you leave that bag of trash, please, in the van today? No one knows who you are here. Just stop. And boy, did he showed me, man. We ended up we found this little village that they liberated in Tremensoli, Italy. And sure enough, Rocco brings out the bag of black and white photos and newspaper clippings of when they went back to, you know, dedicate plaques and memorials in the 60s and 70s. And the people smoking cigarettes in the town square knew the people in the photographs. So I'll let you play the last clip.
Happy to be there.
If you could turn the volume up just a
Seeing
tad
that
bit.
windy road again, Rocco started pestering me about visiting this village called Tremensoli. He had been carrying around these old photos, these old notes and documents the whole trip, and really wanted to visit the Polar Bear Monument of the 85th Division and try to find some ammo box he left back there in 1944. So we reached Tremensoli, which wasn't well known to our tour guides. You could barely squeeze vehicles through the roads and the buildings, but we found some locals kind of sitting on the corner smoking some cigarettes and asked them if they had known where the 85th Division Monument was.
Well, we're at Tremensoli. There's supposed to be a monument that we put up here in 1992. And it was a hard thing to take. This place was heavily fortified, and we have 2 boxes here. But, I don't know whether we'll find it now. So, there's a restaurant at the top of the hill. This must be the restaurant. At the top of the hill.
Let's go find out.
Signor.
Sapete proprio l'ingresso dall'altra parte.
What year did you take this one? 1992. Ah, in 1992. So they are recognized. They are recognized in some people here. Sagionata restaurante.
Ma forse si riferiva a cosa?
Conosce quelli?
Ma forse lei?
Conosce Questa
Anche me lo ricordavo io.
si conosce questo? Oh, io sono stavo parlando a questi.
So it's incredible. After 75 years, Rocco is showing some of his photographs, and people here is recognizing other people on the photographs. That's just crazy, amazing.
Until the interpreter told us they were recognizing people in the photos who still live in the town today, including an old lady who was just around the corner. We start following these locals. We're pushing Rocco in the wheelchair at this rate. We go down this tiny little alley where they bang on this woman's door. Her two daughters come out, and then the other woman who's 97 years old comes to the door, and then Rocco and the women are starting to reminisce. They're starting to speak in Italian to each other, and most importantly, they're recognizing themselves in the photos that he took from the 40s and when he returned in the 70s.
1992.
E che sapore Lucia! Mamma mia! Questa è storica!
Io stavo parlando con i cristiani, conosce questo?
Sì!
E questo?
This old lady was here during the war. She's 96 years old, and they are talking about the war, the fighting, and that's incredible. It's just incredible.
Showed them the pictures, right? All of a sudden, they all turn around. They all recognized practically 10 or 12 people, you know? So one to oh, wait a minute, she was here in 92. She's 97 years old. I says, is she married? No, brought her out here. I made her laugh like that.
This speech started to become just as powerful as
we can
returning
pause it.
Al to see the grave of his squad leader. Here I was.
Yeah, I ended up, for some reason, of that reunion between him and that old woman, and I cried more then than I did at the cemetery with Al, because there was something about a human connection between all of them together in that little alleyway. And her house was still sprayed with bullet holes from the war. You know, it was amazing. Bullet holes all over the wall. To the left of her house, you've seen where a gentleman from Kentucky did his initials and wrote from Kentucky. That was the 85th Infantry Division there that fought in Italy. Terrific area. I know a lot of people go to Normandy and Belgium and the Netherlands to see where the U.S. troops fought, but Italy's a great, the Forgotten Front is what they call it. But when I started to write their stories, it wasn't until I met a gentleman by the name of Clarence Cormier. I always use him as an example of a reason why I put pen to paper when meeting these veterans, is because Clarence had served with the 106th Infantry Division in World War II. And for those who don't know about the 106th Division, they had one of the biggest surrenders since the American Civil War. Historians will debate how many, but it's between 7,000 and 8,000 men had to surrender at the Battle of the Bulge after only being in Europe for 2 weeks. So it was basically their first day of combat when the whole division folded thanks to the breakthrough of the German offensive. Right where they were is where the line broke, St. Vith, Belgium. And Clarence could have spoon-fed me any story he wanted to, that he was a big war hero, he was a Medal of Honor recipient, he did this, he did that, and instead he wept in his dining room at age 95 to me and cried and talked about how the artillery exploded in the trees above him, and then before he knew it, by the time he looked up, a German had a Mauser pointed in his face, making him take his boots off. The German immediately put on his brand new boots from just being in Europe for 2 weeks, and now the German got a brand new pair of boots, and Clarence couldn't fit his feet inside the German's boots, so he had to cut the toes off of it with a knife to get his feet through to wear. And then he was put in a boxcar train destined for Germany with thousands of other POWs, squished back to chest, could barely even inhale and exhale because of how squished they were in this boxcar. And then 2 American P-47 planes see a German train, and what do you think they do? They start strafing it. Little do they know they're killing their own men inside this confined boxcar. And Clarence is crying his eyes out, telling me the story of how frantic they were, stepping over each other's bodies inside the boxcar, breaking through the train and having the Germans actually open the door for the POWs, and the POWs throwing themselves on the snow on a hillside and forming the letters with their human bodies, P-O-W. Because by the time the planes were coming in for their third round of strafing, they actually saw the letters POW, that they were killing their own guys. And Clarence told me how he reached up and he felt like he could touch that plane when they flew over him. And the pilot threw back his canopy and was waving his kerchief at him. And it was his last taste of freedom, probably for like 6 months after that. And he was 90 pounds by the time he got liberated. And he cried his eyes out telling me that story. And to see a 95-year-old man talk about something that happened 75 years before and cry, and he turned me down wanting to go back to Belgium. And then having his daughter grab me in the hallway and say, I always knew my dad was a POW, but I've never heard him say that story, tell that story. And to hear his daughter say that made me think, well, if his own daughter didn't know that story, how many people in this world or country don't know that story? And I'm going to start writing their chapters. And this solid B student, me, Andrew Biggio, became #1 best-selling author, and my first book, The Rifle, which I saw was out there, sold over 50,000 copies, and spawned me to write Rifle Volume 2, which is also a #1 best-selling. It only came out in October, so I don't know where we're at with numbers there. And, I believe that's probably a solid 45 minutes of us. Is it? Okay. I'm open to questions if anybody has anything. And then, of course, I'd like to get the additional World War II veterans in the room to sign my rifle tonight and help me reach 400. Today, I have 391 veterans on this rifle. I'm trying to get to 400, so it would be my honor for you to sign my rifle.
Raise your hand.
Mike has one right here, over here.
Money Mike.
It's more of a statement and a thank you. One thing I've noticed from interviewing World War II veterans is veterans can talk to veterans. And I remember talking to one veteran, and I must have talked to him for 2 hours straight. His name was Ray Eisenhower. He was about 5'4", maybe 100 pounds, soaking wet. He was a ball turret gunner on B-17s. Yeah. And after talking to him, his son pulled me aside and said, Mike, I never heard that story before. Thanks. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is important. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Andy, you mentioned going back to Europe all these times, but I know you've also spoken to vets who served in the Pacific. Have you, or do you have any plans to go to the Pacific? Yeah,
like I mentioned, I'm a Marine. In my unit, fought on Tinian and Saipan and Iwo Jima. And I'm a member of the 1st Battalion, 25th Marines Association, and we're all Iraq and Afghanistan vets because our unit didn't deploy in Vietnam. So it went from World War II to Afghanistan. Our unit history, that is. And the guys are saying, let's go back for the 80th anniversary of Saipan. Can we do that? And Marines are harder to find. Marine Corps World War II veterans are harder to find than U.S. Army veterans because of just the numbers, right? The branches were a lot bigger, the longevity of Marines after World War II was not that good compared to Army veterans, and that's what I've seen statistically. So then now you get, let's say I do find the youngest a Saipan World War II veteran could be is 99 right now, 98 or 99. That would be if you were 18 on Saipan. So now I have to try to see if a 98-year-old man, if he's living on the East Coast of the United States, is able to fly Boston to California, California to Hawaii maybe, Hawaii to Tokyo, Tokyo to Saipan. And that's a lot on a gentleman who is probably not obviously in a great health. So we've dabbled with it. I'm gonna do some research. I'm gonna try to give it a shot, but it's tough to do in the year 2024 as opposed to Boston to Bastogne, Belgium, Boston to Paris, Boston to Rome, quick, fast, easy. I bring paramedics, nurses on the trip. The funding for the Pacific is probably more expensive, too. Yes, I know veterans that have gone back to the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of Iwo Jima, the 50th anniversary of Saipan. A lot of Marines, almost half the 2nd Marine Division protested the 50th anniversary of Saipan because they found out the Japanese were invited, actually. And a lot of guys I met told me that. So yeah, I've considered it. I think we might take a shot at doing that. This June would be the 80th anniversary of Saipan, so we might be a week or two behind or ahead, because what's going to overshadow Saipan in particular is the 80th anniversary of Normandy, D-Day, June 6th. And that's going to just wash everything out, including the liberation of Rome, 80th anniversary, liberation of Rome, liberation of Saipan. Normandy, D-Day is going to take over the media waves this summer because it's the last big anniversary with living World War II veterans. Nobody will really probably be alive for the 90th. The president and every world leader is going to be in Normandy this summer, so I hope that answers your question. I've thought a lot about it, but it's tough to... Then if you're on Saipan and the gentleman you're bringing has a medical emergency, where do you go? Saipan ER? I don't know, so... Right, Guam. Yep.
I'm a senior at McDevitt, and I just want to say it's great hearing these stories. I never heard about anything like this. This is still very new for me, so it's nice seeing somebody so passionate about it, and it's definitely something I want to learn in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
I think it would be an honor. I know it would be for me to watch the 2 World War II guys sign your rifle.
Yep, absolutely. Mr. Schaefer's already on there, so I think we have, who's the other gentleman? Okay. What is it, Harrison?
Irv.
Irv? Irv is his first name? Mm-hmm. Irv Harrison. What's it? Gerv. Gerv. Oh, perfect. Nice and small. We can squeeze you in there. I came from Philadelphia, and the guy's last name was like Santa Pigmonti. I'm like, oh, no. He's like, but my friends called me Piggy. I'm like, can you just put Piggy on the rifle? Yes.
Andy, can you tell them what this poster board is for?
Thank you very much. Thank you for... So as I said, I do different speaking engagements. I'll do a Italy version of my speech in the rifle. I'll do a Belgium version of Holland. Well, when I do talk about Germany, on the rifle, I pick out names of the men of the 17th Airborne Division, which is the Forgotten Jump. We have the Forgotten Front in Italy, and then you also have the Forgotten Front Jump. A lot of people don't know that we had an airborne operation, one of the largest ones, when we sent the 17th Airborne Division over the Rhine River in World War II. It was called Operation Varsity, and they took over 2,000 casualties. And when I first went back to Germany with a World War II veteran, this gentleman's name was Bob White, and he was 99 years old. And I said, Bob, you jumped into Germany. Let's go see your drop zone. Because I had been back to Normandy, and I had known all over Normandy are monuments and memorials to the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne. They got HBO documentaries, books up the yin-yang, documentaries, movies. And the 82nd and the 101st are both still active divisions today. So they have a lot of good PR people and an active unit. But the 17th Airborne Division disappeared after World War II. And what was even more crazier is that when me and Bob White were on his drop zone in Germany, there wasn't anything that said, here landed the 17th Airborne Division. Now, that's nobody's fault. It wasn't common practice to build monuments and memorials on German soil back then, or after the war, 20 years after the war, 30 years after. It was a sore subject. We weren't just liberators there, but we were invaders and stuff like that. These cities and towns had to rebuild. But 77 years later, I helped raise $14,000, and I went back with 4 veterans from the 17th Airborne, and we erected a 7-foot beautiful monument on the drop zone, and this is hit right here, 17th Airborne Division. So. And I had a lot of help from the 17th Airborne Division Association, the Scions, which I didn't want to do it without them. And we got along great and had a great week over there and almost needed liver transplants by the time we were done drinking all the German beer over there. And we were drinking with those guys until like 2, 3 in the morning. I mean, it was like just unbelievable, you know?
Andrew, did you ever have the honor of talking to anyone that had known your namesake during the war?
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because, man, I have, besides New Englanders, the most veterans on this rifle are from Pennsylvania. I was finding myself driving to Pennsylvania once a month from Boston to meet World War II veterans that people were forwarding me to. And then I started reading the after-action reports from the 34th Division on the month of September 1944. And I saw a guy named Carl DeChico who got the Silver Star that the day my uncle died, September 17th. I said, Carl DeChico. And in the after-action report, it said, entered service from Norristown, Pennsylvania. I don't know where we are from Norristown, Pennsylvania, but okay. So I Google Carl DeChico, and I'm like, oh, I don't find an obituary. I can't find a grave. I'm like, this guy got to be still alive. So I looked him up. I found him on the white pages. Carl DeChico, age 95 or something. And I call, and he answers, and I hear, hello, on the end of the phone. I'm like, hi, is this Carl DeChico? He's like, yeah. From the 34th Division? He's like, sure it is. And I'm like, my name's Andrew Biggio, and I want you to sign my rifle. And he said, where'd you say you're from? I said, Massachusetts. And he goes, that liberal state, and he hung up on me. Hung up on him. True story. I tried calling back. I'm like, I'm not liberal though. I'm like, I'm not a scam, you know. So I said, damn it. I removed this upper handguard from the rifle. I put it in a box. I said, I may never see this piece again, but this guy was with my Uncle Andy. He got the Silver Star, the same offensive, the Battle of the Gothic Line. I wrote all that, pictures of me, pictures of the rifle, pictures of Andy with this upper handguard, and I sent it to Norristown, Pennsylvania. I said, I may never see this piece again, but maybe I can replace it. And a few weeks later, a package is back on my porch from Mr. DeChico, and he signed it, Carl DeChico, G Company, 34th Division, 135th Infantry Regiment. I'm sorry I thought you were a scam and a liberal. I have the note. And if you're ever in Pennsylvania, come visit me. Well, I went down there and I visited him, and what a story. His story's in the first book. He was buried alive at Anzio. He's been Purple Heart with 3 oak leaf clusters. That's 4 Purple Hearts. Amazing man. And then I found myself in Media, Pennsylvania, and met another gentleman, 101 years old, who was with Andy on that hill. Very sad story about, they lost 30 men up there in a span of a few days. Then I went down to Bridgeport, New Jersey, and met the final survivor of Company B of the 135th Infantry Regiment. And as far as I know, nobody's left from that company. And good Lord, the stories they talked about on that hill of mutiny, refusing orders. You know, they knew the Americans were already, you know, making their way into Germany, and here these guys are still on some unknown name hill in Italy. Like, why? And there was a lot of that. These guys are demotivated in Italy, knowing that other units were storming across France and going into Germany, and this race to be the first general to sack Germany, and it was bad, you know, and very sad. I wrote about it in the book about Ed cried. He said he admitted that he tapped out. He came off the hill. He handed off his BAR. He said, I can't take it anymore. And then a lieutenant found him at the bottom of the hill and said, what are you doing down here? Get your ASS up there and bring the Graves registration officers with you. And when he went up there, 30 men dead. And he had to carry them down the hill. That's the guilt he lived with his whole life, having to carry down those bodies in that hill, like where you need a pack mule just to bring supplies up. He's another one who cried in the media, Pennsylvania VFW, telling me the story 76 years later, 75 years later. And that's a man who died at age 101 and didn't die until his son with Down syndrome, who passed away at age 68, passed away first. Took care of his son till his dying day. Yep, if you go on YouTube and you type in World War II vets return to Italy, World War II vets return to Italy, it'll be the first link that comes up. Instagram is The Rifle. Facebook, The Rifle. You'll find me. On Amazon, the book is The Rifle or The Rifle 2.
So here are the two books. We have them for sale outside. They're the cover price. So I think they're $30 each or two for $55, I think is what we're selling for. And I understand you're going to sign them afterwards?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So outside the doors, after you exit, you can get a copy of the books if you'd like. Chris, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jeff. I have a speaker gift I want to present Andy with, our famous World War II Round Table coffee mug, which is also for sale, by the way, out front, if you'd like to ever purchase one yourself. Andy, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Definitely welcome. Thank you very much.
Where's the coffee? I need the coffee there.
I don't know if we have any coffee brews here. I think during church Sunday they might have some, but I don't know about in the evenings. But I have a few words at the end here, just to, we can give another round of Andy at the end, but I just want to have a couple announcements. So thank you, Andy, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
You had a great idea to have a M1 Grand to go around the country to really spark those memories of veterans. That's a wonderful idea that you had, and it really worked. Some of the stories you told about the veterans, they really appealed to our audience, and you could tell by the reaction. And I think we'll have a lot of people buying your books as well because they really have some incredible stories to tell these veterans. And I think you said earlier today that you've interviewed about 400 veterans, so that's pretty impressive. And that is quite a remarkable achievement. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so just a few other things. Our March 7th speaker, I want to reiterate, will be Walter Lasota, USMC veteran of Okinawa survivor. April speaker will be 42nd Division U.S. Army veteran Bud Gaz, who lives in Maryland. Will be coming up for that. Thank you all our veterans, our first president, Bill Jackson, and founder here in the front. Thank you, Bill. Also, I think Kirk Gibson is our other former presidents in the audience too. Thank you, Kirk, for being here as well. Thank you. And thanks also to all our board members and volunteers for what you do. You make it work for us and make it happen. Also, thank you all our attendees. And if you'd be so kind as to give something to our World War II helmet gentleman in the back, we really appreciate your efforts because your contributions help us for our funds. We have to pay for our operating expenses and also for speakers that they staff to stay at hotel rooms and things like that, transportation. So we do appreciate it. Thank you guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you.